Okay, hey folks, Mark Locklear here with Screencast on Chapter 2. So, the majority of Chapter 2 covers MySQL Workbench, which we are not going to be using. So, you still need to read the chapter because you've got a quiz on that chapter, and I'm sure it's going to ask you some questions about Workbench. So, read that chapter, soak in as much as you can, but unfortunately, we're not going to be doing fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it. We're not going to be doing the working with the workbench. I mean, essentially all the MySQL workbench is a GUI interface. Um, Instead, we're going to be using, I think I mentioned this some in the welcome video. Instead, we're going to be using a Linux version of MySQL. And so it's going to be all command line terminal window. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, it's just good to know. Previously at AB Tech, we had I think it was a NOS 120 class, which was, it's called single user Linux, and we actually may still have it. I would encourage you to look into it. And it's not a required course anymore, though. I think it used to be. So anyway, number one is this is going to give you some experience working from the command line. Um, if you go on to do great things in software development, you're going to need to work from the command line. So you might not be a pro, but you're going to need to interact and do command lines sorts of things. So this class is a good opportunity to be able to do that. So really, the sort of the latter part of the chapter where it talks about the MySQL command line, and I mean the command line is the same whether you're on Windows, Linux, regardless of the flavor of Linux you're on, whatever. Then it's going to look the same. So, some of the keystrokes obviously are different if you're on Mac maybe versus PC, but that's all going to look the same. So I think what we're going to do in this screencast is essentially I'm going to walk you through the instructions that I have in the chapter 2 code exercises, and just so you can sort of get a feel for that, and talk about generally some Linux commands. I'm not going to cover all the Linux commands you're going to need to know, but so you're going to need to probably do some of your own work, whether it's Googling or otherwise. But um, yeah, I'll just stop there and say that I'm going to cover the core Linux commands you'll need at least for this particular chapter, what we'll be doing here, but there may be others down the road that you'll need to learn. So, and we'll just address those when we get to them. Okay, so first things first, we've got a terminal window here. So again, I'm on Mac. So if you notice the instructions, I'm creating accounts for everyone. And let me say this just so you understand that there's actually two different accounts here. You're going to have a Linux account, and it's Ubuntu or Ubuntu, however you want to say it, Linux. But by the way, you're going to have a user on the Ubuntu system that's going to allow you to log into the operating system, to the Linux server. And then you've got a separate MySQL user that you use to actually log in and interact with MySQL. So make sure you sort of have that in your head, the difference between these two. Let me pull this down. Now, this may change a little over time, but for right now, it's probably worth showing. So I'm looking here. So the configuration I'm using for the usernames and passwords is going to be the first initial. Your last name is going to be the username, and then your password is going to be your full last name with your student ID, and I guess minus any zeros that might be in front. So now I'm not going to log in with those. I've just got a student account that's set up. I'm going to use that, but just your username and password. I'll be sending you an email that's going to include all this. So just you can sort of interpret it from there. But for starters, we're going to be using this SSH command here. SSH stands for Secure Shell, I think. And it's standard. SSH has been around for 50 years now. So plenty of information out there on the interwebs about it. And then the server, in this case, we're going to be using is this dba120.locklear.me. That's the subdomain I have set up for it. It's it's actually a virtual computing lab server that lives on the NC State domain. But anyway, the domain you're going to be using is this dba120.locklear.me. So in your case, you're going to be logging in. It'll be, let me go back to this real quick. It's going to be, first initial, last name. So for instance, my first name is John, last name's Locklear. It would be jlocklear at dba120.locklear.me. Okay. And then you're going to enter your password here. Sometimes this login tends to take, like, once you've logged in and it sort of gets past itself, before you're logging in again, it's fairly quick. But I've had issues where from time to time where it's really slow and it doesn't want to respond. So I don't know if there's an issue there or not, but if you have an issue, let me know. Okay, so when you log in, it's going to look something like this. You can ignore anything about security updates or anything like that. I'm the administrator of the server, so obviously I'll be updating doing any security updates. You all don't have the rights to doing that anyway. So ls is a good one to know, just so when we're talking about just general Linux commands, ls is one. That's list, I think, is what that stands for, and you're just listing out files that are in the current folder you're in. pwd is another good one. That's present working directory, pwd. So in this case, mine says home/home/student. In your case, it's going to be your username. Every user has their own home folder, and so in this case, it's going to be first initial, last name. Okay, so there's those two. Okay, so we've logged in. We're past that. Go ahead and change your password. You can use the passwd command to do that. Yeah, I do want you to do that. I mean, generally, I don't think student IDs are publicly exposed, but either way, that's not a secure password. I want you to change it to whatever you want it to be. If you run into any issues where you fat fingers something and you lock yourself out, let me know. I should be able to reset your password for you and get you back in. Okay. First thing, and then the next thing we're going to do is copy over a handful of SQL scripts here. So if you bought the book, the CD, or the files that come with the book, you can find those files there. I've got them in Moodle. Also, I've already copied them into the home folder on this server. And in fact, if I go ls/home, notice that they show up here. And notice you can see other students' names here, but you should not be able to, and if you can, let me know, but you shouldn't be able to view any other students' files or any other students' home folders. For instance, again, this is the account I'm logged in as a student here. And if I try to look at, let's see, student 9721, let's say, yeah, I'd get a permission denied error. So that's what you should be getting. However, these book scripts and DB setup folders you do have access to. You have rights to copy. You shouldn't have rights to modify those. So that's the first thing we're going to do is copy. You're basically going to copy those files over from this home folder into your own personal folder so you can modify and do what you want with them there. So first command we're going to run is this copy command here, and I'll sort of walk you through what this means. And notice I'm just cutting and pasting here. CP is going to be the copy command, so we're going to copy. This -R means recursive. That means we're going to copy, not just copy the folder, but the contents of the folder and any folders or files that are in any other folder. So basically the entire contents of the folder, including other files and subfolders too. In this case, we're going to copy this home /book scripts folder, and this dot at the end is important. The dot at the end says, hey, copy it in the current folder that I'm in. And in fact, I'm going to do Control-C here just to exit out of that. I'm going to do present directory again. Okay, you want to make sure in your home folder when you do this. So let me go ahead and paste that back in. Okay, try that again. Copy and then paste here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do that. Now, it doesn't give you sort of an affirmative back. If you do something wrong, it'll give you an error, but if it's right, it doesn't necessarily give you an affirmative message back. You can do ls here. And now if you notice when I do list files, and that ls command would be equivalent to like dir inside Windows. And does dir actually work? Yeah, in fact, dir works here. Over the years, they've sort of taken some cues from Windows and other operating systems and added certain commands in, but ls is the original Linux command for listing files. And in fact, if you notice, the coloring is a little different for the ls command. Anyway, now we've got the book scripts folder here, and if I do ls book scripts, notice how I'm hitting the tab button. If I hit the tab, so when you type in the first couple of letters of a given folder or file name, often, not always, but often you can hit tab and it'll auto complete. So that's a really handy feature. I'd encourage you to use it, especially if you're typing longer files and for folder names. It's just speeds things up a whole lot. So notice if I do a list command here for the book scripts folder now, so I've got all of the chapters, all the files and the folders from these chapters were copied over. Okay, that's that one. And then we also want to copy this db underscore setup folder. So I'm just going to cut and paste that in. Now, if I do ls again, notice I've got the db scripts folder. Okay, so I'm good to go there. Next thing we're going to do is we need to modify this DB or this create databases SQL folder. These are going to be the basis for the tables, and folders that we're going to be running on your individual SQL tables. So we need to modify this file, modify the book file a bit. And then we're going to actually run that SQL script to set those databases and tables up. Okay. All right. So again, following the instructions here, we're going to cd into db setup. Cd is change directory. So we're going into db setup, again, ls. So here we can see that create the databases file that we want to modify. So first thing here is, okay, how do we edit files in this sort of Linux text-based environment? So you've got two choices here. You can use Pico. So I'm going to hit Pico. Notice I'm typing in Pico and hit return. Pico is probably a little easier for the uninitiated if you haven't used Linux servers before. Notice all the commands are down at the bottom. That little caret up symbol is the control key. So control K is paste. Control U is paste, control K is cut, etc. I'm a Vim user, so I'm going to be using Vim. That's VIM, and I would encourage you to use that. Most people out in the real world, if you're doing this kind of work, Vim is what they use. So I'm going to do Control X to exit Pico, and I'm going to do Vim. And remember, we want to modify the create databases file. So Vim's a little different. I'll just give you a couple of commands you can use there. So you use the semicolon, and notice down at the bottom, if you're looking here, notice how that changed. I'll hit escape. So again, semicolon Q allows you to exit Vim. And then to insert, you type I. And notice this little insert popped up here, and now you can type. Okay, so I don't want to do any of that. So, again, following the instructions, we're going to create that database. Notice it says comment out lines 11 and 12, and then change the use statement in line 15 to AP underscore username. And then here you need to insert your username. You need to insert your username in this place so you get a database that's just for you. And in fact, let me show you that real quick. So I need to exit here. So Vim can be cantankerous at times. Okay. I need to log into MySQL here real quick. So again, I'm logged in as a student user here. So might as well cover this while I'm looking at it. Well, let me hold off on that. In fact, I'm going to pause. the video for one second. Okay, I just wanted to check something in MySQL before I started this. So again, we're going to go back into this create databases SQL file. That's what we're going to modify. Notice I'm using tab there, speeds things up. So we're going to comment out line 11. In fact, in the lower lower right-hand corner of this screen, notice you can see the column there. So we're going to comment out lines 11 and 12. So in SQL, to comment out a file, it's 2 ticks. And the reason we're commenting these out is we're not going to drop the AP database doesn't exist. We're going to be actually creating that now. So we're just going to comment it out. And then also, since we're using a shared server here, only one person can have access to any given database. So that's why we're creating, instead of the AP database, and again, this is the database that the book uses, we're going to be using, we're going to put you all's last name in front. Okay. And so now instead of use AP here, make sure I get this right. Yeah, it says where, it says change the use statement in line 15 to use AP underscore and then whatever your username is. So we're going to see AP underscore, in this case, student is the account that I'm logged in here with now. That's why I'm using that. All right. So we're going to exit and quit that. Okay, I've modified that file. Now we're going to go into MySQL and actually run that SQL statement. Now, important here that you're inside the DB setup folder when you do this. So if I type ls here, again, I'm at the root of this particular folder. I'm at the root of the DB setup folder. So the command that I run inside MySQL, which is called source, the source command is going to look at the root of whatever folder you're in when you log into MySQL. So you need to be in the DB setup folder before you actually log into MySQL. Okay. So now let's talk about logging into MySQL. To log into MySQL, it looks something like this, -u, and then your username. In my case, it's student, and then -p for password. So again, MySQL says, hey, we want to log into the MySQL. The user we're going to log in with, in this case, is student. Yours is going to be whatever your username is. Should be first initial, last name, I think. And then /p says, hey, I want you to prompt me for the password. So when I hit that, notice it prompts me for password. I'm going to log in. And then, so now we're out of MySQL prompt here. Okay. A couple things we can do here. We can do show tables. And again, most of this, in fact, all of this is covered in the book. Show tables actually doesn't run because we haven't selected database. We can do show databases. And notice it shows us these. So you should have, at this point, you should have an AP underscore and then whatever your username is. So I think first initial, last name, right? And then that's the database that we're going to load this SQL file into, okay? All right, so notice I'm back on these instructions. Now I'm at log into MySQL and run. So we're going to run this command, source create databases.mysql, okay? I'm just going to paste this in. And this source command, essentially what it says is, remember the create databases SQL file is the one that we just edited. And maybe we'll go back and look at the contents of that just so we're clear on what it does. But that's the SQL file that we're going to actually load here that's going to create the tables within this AP database, okay? Okay, yeah. So you're going to get some errors like this, but for the most part, it should run fine. These are the successful queries. There are a couple of errors here, but we can ignore those. So a good test to see if this ran is if we go show tables now. Well, no, let's see. Let's do show databases again. All right, and let's go ahead and use AP_student. Notice tab works here too, which is kind of handy. The use command just says, okay, this is a particular database that we want to perform queries or actions on. And now if we do show tables, notice we see all these. I'm just going to just sanity check. So we're seeing that the tables are there, so we know that's a good thing. We know those commands run. Let's look at paid invoice. If I do select star from paid, see tab does not work when you're doing queries like this. Paid invoices. Notice I get all my data here, and I could do maybe just shorten this up, limit 5. Okay, so I've got data. Okay, so that's just a real quick test to sanity check that okay, the queries ran and they populated the databases, or they populated the tables with data, which is sort of what our goal is. So if I exit now, notice I'm back in the DB_setup folder. Let's look at the create databases script, just to give you an idea of what it does. So here's a standard one. Again, the book goes into more detail on all this, so I won't get too far in the weeds, but in this case, we're going to create a table called vendors. That vendors table is going to have all of these rows in it. And then if we get a little farther down, notice we're actually inserting, here's where we're inserting data into these tables. So again, I'm not going to get too far in the weeds in this screencast on it. We're going to be covering all of this in later chapters. I just wanted to give you an idea of what was actually happening here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop there for now. Inside the exercise, though, for the actual code submission, I'm going to probably have you run a query or two, just to sort of sanity check that, the queries ran and that you have your database set up correctly. Probably either have you do screenshots, either do a screenshot after you've ran the queries, or maybe cut and paste and put those in text file. Screenshots are probably easier to do, and I think most folks will be able to handle that. So that's probably what I'll do. But that's all for now. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.